Steve, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, can you give myself and the audience a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, and how you got into the field?
Sure thing. So I'm Steve Orrin. I'm the Federal Chief Technology Officer and Senior Principal Engineer for Intel Corporation. And basically my job revolves around helping the federal government and public sector adopt both current and future technologies and architectures, really push the envelope of what's the art of the possible when it comes to everything from hardware to software to cloud services, and helping to map those technologies to their mission and enterprise needs. And then sort of the other half of my job is translating government speak back into Intel speak so that our products and technologies can evolve and be developed towards those requirements as well. And so I, in some ways, play a two-way communicator, if you will, helping the government and helping the Intel business units understand government better. Mostly focused on the U.S. public sector, but our use cases are global in nature. My background is in cybersecurity, having run multiple security startups throughout the 90s and 2000s, and then running security pathfinding for Intel for about 9 years prior to taking the federal role.
So, you're a translator.
Exactly.
That actually is a surprisingly important role in the IT and security space, is that you have entities that don't understand each other's lingo trying to make business decisions on keeping companies safe.
Exactly. And helping to understand, the bits and bytes of the technology and what does it mean for how do you solve real world problems? And that's really been the fundamental struggle you see often, is that everyone wants to throw a technology widget at a problem, which is probably the good thing to do. But on the other end, how do I catch it and make it apply to something that makes an impact?
So let's start talking about that. So if you are running a small to large size business, which is encompassing all of them, every business nowadays has a cybersecurity risk profile. If you have a device, or you have if you have a website, if your people have phones, there's an attack surface there, and there is a risk to your business model. So let's kind of talk through what some of those, low hanging fruit, like where the heck do I start in dealing with cybersecurity at my business?
So, Chris, that's a really good question, and often it's something that needs to be asked right up front: is where to begin, because there's so much to be done. IT and IT security in particular has a limited budget, limited workforce, and an infinite amount of vulnerabilities, exploits, and tasks ahead of them. So, where do you begin, and how do you make measurable difference in the risk? And it really comes from the beginning with what you just said: having a risk posture, understanding the risk environment. Is step one. You can't secure what you don't know. So understanding your assets, your services, your resources, and having, whether it be a formal catalog or just an assessment of the things you're trying to protect. Step one. And then from there, what really drives a successful risk profile and risk management is understanding the risk associated with those assets. And this is often lost when people look at sort of these big frameworks, whether it be the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is a great framework. Buried in the text there is mapping those risks and mapping those assets to business. Not every system is your most critical system, yeah. And not every attack is the one that's going to bring your system down. And so understanding what risk management isn't about solving every security problem, it's about managing the risk. And so one of the key things that we see CIOs and CISOs that are being successful is being able to do that assessment of both the systems and things they need to protect, the data, but also how it maps to critical business. Knowing what's important to keep your operations going, and applying the right risk management profiles to those resources, so they, from a prioritization perspective, but also from a security control perspective. Understanding the dependencies is another key aspect, and knowing what are those dependent resources. So if you're in the bank, and the cash management and checking are your major sources of income and what you provide, understanding that they are also dependent on resources and capabilities. Mm-hmm. And so there may be certain systems that are more important than others, or that have to be protected and isolated from others. And so I think step one is just getting a really rich and manageable risk profile and risk management infrastructure. But then the follow-on is, okay, great, you understand your environment, you started getting an indication of the risk. The next question people often go to is, what are the technologies I need to do? What can I do that's different? And I think what's important is people talk about this. Security industry professionals have always harped on, well, we need better security hygiene.
Yeah.
That's going to solve everything. And it's important. We need good security hygiene. You need to have patch management. You need to have active sensors and detection. But part of the reality we live with today is that most of your large and even medium organizations have that. They have good hygiene. They're doing all the best practices. If you would look at all the checklists, they're in compliance with whatever regulations they need to be, and they're still getting attacked. They're still getting data breaches and ransomware and denial of service. And so the question really isn't, how do I do better hygiene? It's what are the key things I need to do above hygiene, beyond hygiene, to make an impact or make a measurable difference in my security posture. And that's where we start to look at what are some key technologies or processes that can be put in place that sort of raise the bar again and sort of do beyond that. And when you look at the CISO's budget, and if they've got 80% of their budget going to antivirus and firewall and data protection, sort of as the hygiene and patch management, what's that next 20% go to that could actually make a bigger difference than just the security tool du jour? And so some of the recommendations that I've given that have really resonated. One is looking at sort of your overall priorities. If you can limit the impact of an attack, that can make a difference. You're not going to prevent every attack, but if once it's in, you can prevent it from going catastrophic and going scale in your organization. And so one of the technologies and approaches that I often recommend is network segmentation, microsegmentation.
I'm laughing because I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody.
And it's not the sexiest part of the security strategy. It doesn't often require even a new technology or a new product. You probably have the core infrastructure, whether it be in network devices like switches and routers, or even easier software-defined networking to do this today. And oftentimes there's a pushback was, oh, it's going to be harder to manage. Well, those days are gone. The management tools that come with these products today are able to operate in highly micro-segmented environments. They're able to do it today if you plan for it. And one of the key things that microsegmentation will do is it gives you three major benefits out of the gate. Number one, obviously, it means that you have smaller network enclaves. So when something does go wrong, it gets contained. It can be contained more quickly. It doesn't spread as catastrophically through the whole organization. So when ransomware shows up at a branch office, it may take down the branch office, but it doesn't take down headquarters or 12 other branches. So that's step one, is it allows you to better contain the threats that are happening. Two, it allows you to get much more granular in your policies. Whether you're going down the path of zero trust or just trying to get a more rich risk management infrastructure, one of those tenets is having domain-specific policies, dynamic policies that change with the risk or change with the business. Microsegmentation allows you to implement those policies much easier because you're not changing something for such a large organization. Policies are hard. Yeah. Creating one, by doing a one size fits all, you actually neuter the policy to the point where it's almost useless because it has to fit every situation. Network segmentation allows me to create very specific policies of the security controls, the flows, the accesses. They're very domain specific and context aware, which means I can get very granular. I can actually control it really well and not have to worry about systems in another branch that have a different profile. I can give them a specific policy. So it really becomes a benefit to be able to create these various policies that are context aware and domain specific. And then the last benefit really leads to my next recommendation. And I've come with this idea, I call it threat canaries. And so a lot of people have existing infrastructure. It's hard to refresh it. It's hard to push new tools out, new sensors into every environment because you have to refresh every system. You have to create a whole new infrastructure. You have to buy new tools. One approach that I'm positioning is once you have that microsegmentation, is you don't try to refresh every system in there to the latest and greatest with all the sensors turned on. I mean, you can, but no one has the budget for that today. What if you could put one sensor, one node into that environment, a working node that's the latest and greatest, has all the protections, all the patches, the latest hardware, the latest OS, with the sensors turned to 11, and let that be your canary in the coal mine. So now you have multiple microsegments, each with their own specific policies, and a sensor for that environment that can be set to full mode, set to 11. So it's detecting everything, it's populating everything for that one sensor in that environment. What that will allow you to do is to catch things early before they become catastrophic, before they filter back to headquarters where it starts to impact a lot of the core systems that maybe somebody will be watching more closely. And so by having network segmentation really at the micro level, it allows you now to deploy those sensors into that specific environment And one of the big challenges to sensors in general is that you get a lot of false positives because you have to tune them to what's going on in the environment. The more generic the environment, the more false positive you get really specific on your sensor. This is again one of those benefits of microsegmentation is I can tune that sensor to the specifics of that environment. If you're running Windows 11 in that environment and you've got applications that are being accessed that are all database, well then if you see something else, it's going to be an anomaly. Whereas if it was the whole organization, you have everything, and so you have to be able to assume everything. And so again, those three things really are the benefit that all start with microsegmentation.
And so would you also choose, if you have a dozen microsegments in your network that you have now said, well, I can only afford one threat canary system. Let me put it in the most, business critical area, so to speak.
So it's interesting you say that. I would suggest, obviously you want to put it in the most critical, but you also want to put it also in the most exposed. So maybe the one that's got the most internet access or the most users that are under your, most employees coming into. Think of it from both where you want to put that canary is where the most risk is. Not necessarily where like if you've got a mainframe system in the back that's got guards with guns and no one gets to access it. I mean, you should put a threat canary there, but is that the first place you put it? Or do you put it really out at the edge or into an environment that's the dirtier side of your network where things are more likely to happen and then you're able to catch things early and get that sort of pre-knowledge? Ideally, you should put sensors into every one of your network enclaves. And again, because you're only putting one, it sort of limits the pain, if you will, from both a cost and a management perspective. And then what I've seen happen is that they'll start getting good data out of those sensors. And then it's a help business justification to put more sensors, to basically refresh more systems, to push more tools into environments because they're starting to get quality data out of them. And so from a business perspective for a CIO or CISO, putting those sensors into all the different areas and then starting to collect data and then map that to your dashboard and say, hey, we're catching these things, we're blocking these lateral moves. It's a good way to justify we need more because it's actually providing value. When you can do measurable impact on risk, that's the game.
And that's I suspect one of the larger challenges with security infrastructure is how do you provide the quantifiable business case to management of this is why we need more money, as opposed to we need everything dialed to 11 everywhere, give us 10% of the company's entire budget.
Exactly.
At least if you could say, well, here's where we're seeing stuff and this is what we're seeing, it's an easier business case.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually one of the interesting side effects of having it be network enclave specific is generally when you see the dashboard, the CIO provides a whole of enterprise view. We caught 4,000 attacks this week out of maybe 50,000 that got whatever that number is. But if you're on the other side of that executive room, you've got people who own the lines of business. It's hard for them to understand, well, was that my systems? Was that his systems? Who's getting the benefit of this? But if you can show that, this network sensor in the cash management enclave versus this network sensor in the credit card enclave, and be able to show domain specific results, that again, this is how you get line of businesses to jump on board and say, yes, verily, I want to pay for more sensors in my environment because I'm seeing the benefit to my business as opposed to just the macro, which again, it becomes hard to slice and dice.
Sort of like if you see lots of issues happening at one branch, well, we need to do some training over there.
Yes.
So what was the next point now?
So after you've done the network segmentation and those sensors, one of the things we're starting to see is looking at your data. And so right now in the modern world, we see that data is king. The old style was I got to protect my network and my systems. That's where all the security, if you look at a lot of the legacy security tools, and legacy, I mean, it doesn't mean they're old, it's just approaches. It's always been about how do I lock down my network and how do I inspect and manage the system, the endpoints, the nodes, the servers, even the cloud, all fall on that system network approach. And again, that's the sort of the normal cyber hygiene. The thing we all know today is data is the oil. It's the thing that drives an enterprise. And you really have to, people understand that you have to protect the data wherever it lies. It may be in the cloud. It may be in your partner's cloud. It could be on an employee desktop at home. The data, you want to be able to protect the data through all stages of its life cycle. And so that's where concepts that we're seeing in the cloud come to bear around confidential computing. So looking at how do I protect my data in use? I protected it. I can store it on disk securely. I can transport it securely with SSL or IPsec or TLS. But what about when it's being operated on, when it's in the cloud, in virtualization, in its container and being transacted upon? How do I protect the data there, edge to cloud, and recognizing that your data flows back and forth and all around? What confidential computing is starting to do, and we're seeing that different cloud providers provide this as a service, is allow you to protect that last mile so that you're protected from both tenants that are co-resident with you in a multi-cloud or hybrid cloud environment, but also means that it gets the cloud provider out of your trusted control base. And so from a compliance perspective, if your cloud provider or your service provider isn't part of your trust domain, then you can wrest back control over who gets access. You don't have to worry about the rogue admin or an admin misconfiguration if you're controlling the security. And that's what confidential computing. And so while it's still nascent as far as the wide scale adoption, the services are there. So when you think about where am I going to start focusing on next, that's one that we recommend people start looking at now so they can better plan their application development and rollouts to take advantage of that last mile of security, especially in the day of data breach and ransomware. Your data is being compromised and you've already got transport security and network and full disk encryption. So why are we still having this data breach problem? It's because they're sucking it right out of the database as it's being queried. So at that point, it's not encrypted anymore. And so by encrypting it even at in use, even if they were to exfiltrate the data, it's encrypted data. And so therefore you're less risky. And again, it goes back to the understanding the risk to the data kind of approach.
And this would prevent all of those, oh, hey, someone found another AWS instance where the data was just sitting there.
Yeah, many times. And again, it comes down to just putting your stuff in the right kind of instances. Now, there's going to be human error will prevail. And so if someone puts their stuff into a confidential computing instance and is securing it, and some admin at your organization moves it back to a dev test environment, that again, that's why you have compensating controls to check when that's happened, but it gives you another control to look for. Yeah. And that's the key, giving you more things to monitor, which really leads to the next step, which is moving from an audit or annual check to a continuous monitoring approach. And the idea of continuous monitoring isn't new. When the federal cloud came out, they came up with this concept that everyone should do continuous monitoring, which was hard, and it took a lot of work to get there. But the next piece of that puzzle, which people forget, it's not just I need to monitor continuously, because we've had great examples, SolarWinds being one, where things were being monitored, but no one was looking at the data. Or the data didn't provide the context to know what was really going on, and that the threat profile had changed. So it's really about continuous monitoring and continuous or dynamic policy and risk management. It's tying those two worlds together. Because even if we're always monitoring, we have someone watching the SOC dashboards all day long, if the threat environment changed, if there's a new attack or a new product that's brought in that has new threats, has the risk profile been updated? And we're going to wait for the next 6 months change cycle to go do that. Well, that's too late. That's 6 months of exposure that's not being looked at. And so by making the policy side and the risk management more dynamic, it will allow you to then be able to have better context for that continuous monitoring part as well.
It's funny. I thought of a real world example outside of the IT space of kind of moving from that annual audit to the continuous monitoring. Was a company I worked for used to do annual inventory. And of course, at the annual inventory, you'd always find out that locations are off and stuff is missing. And now you've got to go back 12 months trying to figure out, well, when did it disappear? Okay, right. Let's go to quarterly. We're going to move to quarterly warehouse counts. Definitely better. Things could get caught quicker, and the magic bullet, so to speak, or maybe not the magic bullet, but the thing that made a huge difference was when the company moved to daily cycle counts. We're not going to do a count on every location in the warehouse every day, but we're going to hit the most active locations in the warehouse on a more frequent basis. So if the inventory gets off, we found it right away, and it made those quarterly and annual inventory counts go really fast because there weren't thousands of things misplaced. There were one or two things misplaced, and everybody got to go home quicker.
Exactly. And it's one of those examples in the warehouse use case where technology is helping to provide the means to do that, whether it be barcode, RFID tagging, and things like that, being able to better instrument the warehouse. Yeah. And that we get that same corollary in IT as we can instrument our systems better and monitor them with that sort of tracking data, if you will, then you're going to find the losses quicker. When you look at some of these large scale data breaches, and we're looking at terabytes of data that made its way out of the organization. Yes, there was a breach and there was something that wasn't patched, but where was the exfiltration monitoring? Where was the data is going to some external IP address that we're not monitoring and seeing this amount, even if it's at a trickle for a long, long time. And so it's again, instrumenting your environment. The warehouse example is a great way of thinking about it, is you want to know where every item in your warehouse is at any given time, so that you can track it from an inventory perspective and availability, but also do your capacity planning based on that information. Same idea in IT. I need to know what resources are being utilized for what reason, and if they're being misused, I want to know quicker.
Yeah. So what is the next object that we look at?
So that's a great question. As we start looking at these sort of basic building blocks, you see they start all linking together. It's about getting your infrastructure ready for more dynamic policy, and then doing the things to make it more dynamic. And so there's a mapping to that. Some of them are implementing those controls, like the network segmentation, confidential computing. And then the other is about being able to apply more dynamic policies to change, or context-aware policies to make those changes. And then the next piece of that is driving your business accordingly. And so how do you map what we've done, all this greatness that we've done, how do we map that now into how business and dev test and solution development is produced? So a lot of what we do in IT and security is going back and trying to fix or modify the core businesses that we're in. And so it's always sort of a retroactive approach. Okay, we've got this cache management system. How do I better secure it? How do I isolate it? How do I protect its data? The next optimization phase, and really this is the last mile, if you will, is if you look at a maturity model, after you've figured out all the basics, then it's the optimization step. The last piece of the maturity model is, how do you then inform new business? So when the next application is being rolled out, or when you're moving from an on-prem ERP system to a cloud-based or to a SaaS-based one, having the models that you built in already from a security perspective be part of that decision, just part of that development process. So you're building for microsegmentation, you're building for dynamic policy changes. And then the system that comes out the other end through that process is ready for dynamic policy, ready for being loaded into an isolated network, being able, and again, I hate using the buzzword, but these building blocks lead you towards that idea of a zero trust architecture. At the end of the day, everyone thinks that they're going to buy some product to give them zero trust. It's not a destination. It's a journey, and it's a long journey. It doesn't end. You don't ever become zero trust. It's how you do business, how you do security, that becomes zero trust in its approach. These building blocks allow you to start thinking about the way you implement security, and I think one of the things that a lot of CISOs are seeing the benefit of these building block steps is they become less of a IT security applying it to the business. They start becoming a partner with the business. And that's the end game everyone wants, is to be part of be a crucial part of the business conversation. And be, just like legal is, just like marketing, that security is built in from the get-go. And as we always have known, this has been a mantra for a long time. You don't want to bolt on security, you want to built in. And so when CISOs become a partner to the business, number one, it becomes easier to get budget because you're lined up to what the business does. But it also becomes much more natural to how the corporation operates.
So is this more of a challenge if you have an existing business that's been around, the number of decades increases, that these processes are more difficult to implement? It's one thing if you're starting a new business, you can think about this from day one of, okay, we need a segment thing. As we bring on new business units, they're micro-segmented. We've got zero trust between departments, so to speak. But if you've got a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 company, I assume most of them have probably done this stuff, but the larger the entity, is it almost the harder the process is going to be to move through?
So I think it's perception. So perception-wise, yes, it feels harder because they're already doing it a certain way, and there's billions of dollars of revenue being generated based on an existing approach. But one of the things that you get inside of these large organizations, and they have large development organizations, they're not sitting still because the customer isn't sitting still. Very few of these large businesses are static, if any, at this day and age. They're all adopting digital technology. They're all transforming, modernizing. whether it be going to the cloud, moving to microservices, going to edge-based computing, all of those changes happening. So even in the billion-dollar industries that have been around for a long, long time, there's constant transformation. And so there's a perception, but it's actually the reality is you can get involved in those just like you would if you're in a smaller or newer business. It really, in some cases, it works to your advantage because they've already figured out how they move data around. Now they're just transforming it. One of the things that was really interesting, we look at the ransomware attacks that happened a couple of years ago now. Some of the things we learned from that, just from how the IT market has evolved, and I'm going to pick on the meatpacking one, the JBS out of Australia. We learned two really important things from that attack. Number one, no one is immune from a cyber attack because you can't get any less sexy, I think, than meatpacking from a target perspective. But it also showed that every aspect of our lives has become digital.
Yeah.
The meatpacking issue was reliant on digital infrastructure systems to move the meat through the system. And when those got ransomware, meatpacking shut down. So that's a physical world thing that, is, again, not thought of as being a digital environment, but it was absolutely what they call it, an industry 4.0 environment, all automated with quality assurance and testing and everything going on without many humans in the loop. And if you look at any modern manufacturing line from frozen pizza to car gears, it's all a large computer-based edge industrial system that is heavily reliant on IT systems. And so the key thing is that even some of these sort of non-traditional, we think of as IT businesses, are IT businesses. And so the opportunity to insert better security practices into those transformations as they continue to evolve is always there. But you're right, there's this common perception that, this company's we've been doing this for 40 years. This is how it's done. You talk to the CIOs and every day they're trying to figure out how do they squeeze an extra couple cents of efficiency out of the systems they have. And they're willing to invest heavy dollars to take advantage of new technologies to help do that.
So do you think one of the confusions with ransomware and cyber attacks is that there has to be an intentional target? We're trying to infiltrate electronic arts. We're trying to infiltrate this particular entity, or some of it just entirely opportunistic. Hey, we found this system. We have no idea whose it is until we get into it, and then we finally figured out, hey, it's a meatpacking company. Okay, let's have some fun.
So I think you'll find that there are three modes there. There's the targeted, which is I'm going after this bank, I'm going after this entertainment company for a reason, whether it's because they have a lot of money I want to get or I don't like what they just did. There's like you said, the opportunistic. Well, we sent out all these different bots and they brought us back some really juicy things. We're going to go now focus on those juicy things. And then there's the purely automated, which is go do crypto mining anywhere you are. So whether I'm crypto mining in a bank's headquarters or I'm crypto mining on an end user's laptop, I don't care. I'm still driving my bottom line, which is crypto mining. And you find all three. The problem from the CIO's perspective and the CISO's perspective, there's no way to know what the intent of the attacker is, even after they've gotten in oftentimes. That attribution is very hard to do, and it's rare. If you look at the numbers of where we've been able to attribute to a particular campaign or activity or an entity and the ones that we haven't, you hear about the ones where they say, oh, it's TrickBot or it's this one, because that gets into the news. But how many thousands of attacks and breaches are still, no one has any idea. And that's the reality we live in, is you can't know in advance what the intent are. The thing to keep in mind is that, what really we've shown is that we've seen in the industry is that everyone is a potential target, even if you're not being targeted. There's the automation and the tooling that the adversaries are using allows them to go pretty deep, pretty broadly without having to go pick on a particular organization or craft a unique spearfish for that specific, executive administrator or accountant in the organization to try to get. They do that, and we see that. But we also see that, just commonplace, phishing scams can be pretty broad and gets, again, the success rate doesn't have to be high for the amount of cost that goes into putting it out there.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about phishing is it's very, very cheap from the attacker's perspective.
Indeed.
I can send out billions of emails, and I guess that's really the issue with security as a whole, is the attacker just needs to get it right once, but the defender needs to get it right 100% of the time.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we're trying to do, we as an industry are trying to do is move away from that. I need to be 100% secure. And that's where you start seeing, like we've got these standards coming out around resiliency. The goal isn't to be 100% protected because that will never happen. But the two questions you want to ask is, how do I operate through? So how do I continue to run my business while I'm actively being attacked or being exploited? And resiliency, how do I get back to a known good state in a timely fashion? So business continuity, disaster recovery, fail good kind of approaches. And we've seen, NIST 800-193 is an example of doing platform-based resiliency. So you assume you're going to get attacked. You assume that laptop or that server is going to get a piece of malware on it or going to get its firmware compromised. That's a given. The question is, how do I get back to a known good state? Whether it be in whatever your SLA is in 24 hours, in 1 hour, in 2 days, whatever that SLA is, how can I get back to operating in a known good state and be able to get back to doing my business? And then the other side of the conversation, and this is not as much a technology, oftentimes just good business processes. How do we maintain our operations while the ransomware is running wild? Yeah. And that's a critical part of the overall business continuity planning. And if I want to think of one other recommendation that I often give, I would say that gamify things. So you've got a business plan, you've got a business continuity plan, you've got your disaster plan, you've got your ransomware plan, you've got these great plans. Assume you have the plans. How often have you run those plans? Yeah. Have actually done the game and the key thing, not IT security, not IT, with everybody, with legal, with your CEO, with your marketing team, with your brand team. Run the full exercise. New York Times reports you just got hacked by ransomware, are being exploited for $1 billion. Run the full exercise all the way to the forensics, the getting systems back on, to the other side of it, which is what do you communicate to the press? What do you talk to your analysts about? Like, you have to gamify the whole thing, because what we see when these things actually happen is oftentimes there may be some good plans, but a lot of people spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. What's the appropriate spot? Well, let's get a meeting together. Now we have to have committees of committees to be able to make a decision that if we'd done the gamify, everyone would know their role, their job, and what needs to be done. And so one of the best recommendations is run the scenarios, do the war gaming, and do it with everybody. Get the board in the room. And what you found with some of these boards, even at the big companies, they actually appreciate being brought in as part of the game exercise for two reasons. Number one, they get a better sense that you are taking security seriously in the organization. But from a board member, they also then see, hey, this company's doing it this way. I may be the board member here, but I'm running this organization. We need to be running that. So you start to spread the message about what the right practices are. And this is another example where we shouldn't be keeping this stuff secret. Boards should be sharing amongst themselves. Companies should be sharing CEO to CEO or CIO to CIO how they run these business continuity, because ransomware affects everyone. Yeah. Data breaches affects everyone. And the adversaries are collaborating. We need to be collaborating too. But definitely, gamifying is a key thing to help reduce the amount of time it takes to get an adequate response.
Yeah, and I think the process of doing it also helps educate everybody in the system. Here's where you don't need to freak out. Here's where you do, and I think you're almost always guaranteed to find things that you didn't that you missed.
Yes.
What do we do
gap
about
analysis or postmortem is very important.
We need to notify all of our customers that this happened, yet the customer database is compromised. How do you notify the customers?
It's a great example.
Someone I was talking about was, you need to figure out the lawyers that you're going to use for things before you need to use them. If you're in the event and then you're going out and asking your cohorts, hey, what lawyer should we use for this thing? It's already too late at that point.
Exactly. And you should already have the retainer contract ready to go. Indeed.
So one of the things that we were talking about, and I think it ties into this a little bit before we started recording, was supply chain issues. And we're not talking the meatpacking supply chain here. We're talking technology supply chain and how to address those issues, because it's, from my perspective, micro business here, I don't have control. I have control what goes on my servers. I can watch that stuff. How do I manage what's going on with my partners and their partners and the partners down the line? Because as we were talking before we started recording, I had an issue where several links down the chain got compromised, and some cryptocurrency mining was was put into the supply chain, and it worked its way through the system to my website, and my website was telling users, hey, mine cryptocurrency in your browser for this unknown entity. Well, my website wasn't compromised, my partner wasn't compromised, it was someone down the line. How in the world do we start addressing that type of issue?
So, Chris, it's a really good question, and it's being brought. This question is being brought up in boardrooms and government agencies and standards organizations as we speak. It is a challenge that everyone is trying to figure out, and with Log4j and SolarWinds, it's in the news, and people are trying to respond. At its core, I think the first step in the notion or the process is transparency or visibility, depending on what side of the coin you're on. You can't secure what you don't know, and you can't know unless you're able to get that information. And so whether it be something as formal as an SBOM or software bill of materials, or just understanding who your supply chain partners are in their ecosystem, getting that traceability, getting that visibility so that you can make better risk decisions. And that's really at the core. If you look at the guidance that's coming out, or even the SBOM committees, at its core, it's not that the SBOM document's going to give you better security. It's not going to add a new firewall rule, if you will. But it's going to give you the ability to make better decisions, because we only can make good decisions based on information. So to take your example, if you have visibility into who those supply chain participants are, and you can then start to look at, well, how many times have they had vulnerabilities? Are they currently vulnerable to anything in the CV database? How can I do that kind of mapping with the artifacts that I'm getting? Then I can make better risk determinations. And that could be something as draconian as, I'm not going to buy or leverage this product because it's too vulnerable, too risky. That probably won't happen all the time. What more often that will happen is, okay, I'm taking on this risk and I'm going to mitigate it with this other compensating control. So yes, we're going to get a service from a third party that I don't have a lot of visibility into, who's their developers, but I'm going to put better security on what I do. I'm going to monitor the traffic for that, because it's a risk control that I put in place because I have the knowledge, even if the knowledge tells me it's risky. So step one is getting that visibility, and the step two is really connected to it, which is how. Vendors need to start asking for it, and not just asking for it. Hey, could you give me this? We as a whole collective industry, both on the consumer and the producer side of it, have to start putting our money where our mouth is and saying, my contract is going to require these visibility artifacts. I'm going to require, in order to use your product or to promote your product or to leverage your product in my thing, and I'll give you the credit that I'm using XYZ widget, I need to get these artifacts in. And what we've seen in the executive order in 14028 and the memorandums that came after all the requirements, and CISA needs to create a standard and all this, at the very bottom it was, and the federal accounting regulations need to be updated to require SBOMs or similar artifacts as part of the contract process. That last piece of the puzzle is absolutely crucial. When it becomes a requirement, just like the functionality is a requirement, then any vendor that's going to be selling to, in this case, to the government, or it could be to corporate America, if it's in the contract, then they will start to adhere to it. So we got to make this the requirement. And then at the end of the day, we have to not make it a checkbox. And I think that's what the last piece is, that oftentimes when we do regulations and controls, everyone says, well, give me my checklist. I'm going to go tick, 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 tick. Done. We got an SBOM, put it into a file, we're done. That's not the case here. For supply chain security to work, we need to use that content, make risk decisions based on it. And that means extracting the relevant details, mapping to CVEs, or there's a new standard that's being worked on called VEX to allow the vendors to better inform the vulnerabilities that apply to their products. There's a lot of work being done, but at the end of the day, the consumer or the corporation that's bringing this software in needs to operationalize the artifacts they're getting. And there's some great guidance coming out of ESF and other and NIST and others about what, as a corporation or as a government entity, to do with those artifacts, and how do you scale them and operationalize them into your environment. So it really is those three things coming together: getting the visibility, and that has to be done at the supplier and developer all the way through to the customer, making it a part of the contract process or part of the acquisition process, if you will, and then use it once you get it.
Gotcha. So as we wrap up here, let's take a step back, and if there's one asset class on a cybersecurity landscape that people miss most, what do you think it is?
Ooh, that's a very good question. What is the one thing they miss most? I think, and this is, comes up with the SolarWinds as an example, or Log4j, is that a blind spot has been things that we thought, like the things that came into our enterprise through the front door that were approved.
Hmm.
So we've got lots of tools out there looking for malware. That's an industry that's been around for a very long time, looking for the anomaly up front. What we aren't doing a good job of is what I call the product specific monitoring, looking at the things that we have, the data, the flows, the applications, and monitoring them for anomalous activity or for aberrant behaviors. And that's, sort of a shift in how we do it versus I'm looking for something weird on the network. I'm looking for a file that shouldn't be there. Again, we do a lot of that. That's the hygiene part. The thing that's missed often is when I want to look at my word processor, or I want to look at my ERP application, or in your case, I want to look at my website and what's being delivered to the client. Is it acting in an aberrant way, and monitoring that? So I think that's, if you want to say what's one asset that needs to have the dials turned up on the visibility, it's looking at our, the assets we actually manage and monitoring them specifically for what's considered to be known good versus potential anomalous behaviors.
Yeah. Well, seeing things behave outside of their normal characteristics.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, for the small business owner, that's probably going to be well outside the scope of something that they're going to be able to do.
It may be. I think one of the things that they can do though is looking at their dev test environment and then populating some of the quality assurance tests into a production scan. And so you may not be able to afford a whole product to monitor, but doing some some validation testing on a production system after it's already been out there to see, is it still operating like it did in dev test, is an easy way to sort of leverage what you've already invested in for a small business as well. It won't catch everything, but you'll at least know whether or not your product is operating the way you expected it to the day you published it, in the case of a website code or a transaction.
And I suppose having a pathway to, if someone says something is not behaving right, that you just don't assume that they're misunderstanding. You take all reports of incidents seriously and investigate them.
Absolutely. Have someone monitoring that info email.
Yeah, because it would be easy, like in my case, it would be easy for me to be dismissive and say, oh, I know it's not on my side. I checked my code. It's not my code. You must be mistaken, is the kind of the easy position to take. And I guess the answer is, for small businesses, you never assume that a report is wrong. You investigate it. You do what you can to take appropriate measures.
Yeah, and you put it under the bucket of customer service.
Yes. We're going to train all of our customer service people to be software engineers now. So if more people want to be able, if people want to be able to connect with you, where can they find you?
So the best way to find me is to find me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn/S Orrin, so SORRIN. And if you want to look at some of the materials I've written and the content, if you go to intel.com/public sector, that's where you find all of my government recommendations, and a lot of the stuff I've been doing on cybersecurity can be linked off from there as well.
Awesome. Steve, we'll make sure to link both of those in the show notes so people can find them without having to hit rewind over and over to get the spellings right. Thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey podcast today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, Chris.